Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am absolutely thrilled today to welcome Bill O'Hanlon. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
I mean, Bill is very, very impressive. He's an author of 35 books. He's a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist. He is a coach for online businesses and for writing books. He's a speaker. He's prefaced a book that was written in French, and he's been featured on Oprah. He also sings and plays the guitar, as we can see from his background.
Yes, that's
Welcome.
right.
Yes, welcome. I'm really thrilled to have you, Bill.
Well, thank you. And we'll get to, this will be a preview of coming attractions, because we'll get to the music as the story unfolds, because there is a point to being here in this is my home studio. There's a point to being here that relates to our topic today. It isn't just a gratuitous bunch of guitars in the background.
Great. So what's your story, Bill? So where did it all start?
Well, so there are a number of ways to tell it, but the way I like to tell it is I grew up in a big Irish Catholic family in America, very kind of protected. And it was good because I was a very shy guy. I was very anxious. And my family, though, had this kind of value that you should leave as soon as you turned 18. You should either go to university or you should go out and work. It was part of them pushing you out of the nest, and they needed your room for the next child to stay in. So I was the least prepared because I was the shy one. I was my mother's favorite, very sensitive. And I just wasn't very prepared to go out in the world. And I went to a university that was, you can do this in the United States, 2,000 miles away from where I lived. And so I just got lost. And I was an anxious kind of guy anyway, and I was shy, so I started spending most of my time alone. I didn't eat very well. I didn't have much money at university, and I spent most of my money on music records and books anyway, so I didn't eat very well. And I'm sure I was nutritionally deprived, but I got really depressed. And after a while, I was sleeping about 20 hours a day and just thinking, what do people get out of bed for? What's the point of life? I'd sort of lost my meaning. And I thought about doing myself in, and a friend talked me out of it. And she basically said, look, you shouldn't kill yourself. I have 3 aunts that are going to leave me a farmhouse one day, and you can go live in the farmhouse rent-free. You won't have to be around people. You won't have to earn money. You can just write your poetry, which is what I wanted to do at the time. And so I said, fine, I agree, but how old are your aunts? And they were in their 60s. And I thought, well, one of them is bound to die very soon, but they didn't. They didn't die for years. So I had to stay alive because I'd made her this promise I wouldn't kill myself. And then I thought, I've got to find some meaning, some purpose. And I stumbled into, because I was interested in my own depression and psychology, I stumbled into psychology and wound up becoming a psychotherapist, which by the time that the aunts died, I didn't need to go to the farm because I'd found a meaning and purpose for life, because I thought, well, helping people, that is a really good life. Psychotherapists in the States and in Europe as well typically don't make much money, but that was okay with me. I was a hippie at the time. I had really long hair, and I didn't care about money. But after a number of years, a few years of being a psychotherapist, something happened for me is that I got very unhappy with the focus of psychotherapy and psychology. It was focused on what was wrong with people and how ill they were and how damaged they were and how hard it was to change. And I thought, I was a basket case. I almost killed myself. I'm a pretty happy guy now. I don't believe that. I don't believe that people are so damaged. I changed like that. As soon as my friend gave me the possibility of something that could be better in the future, I instantly wasn't suicidal. I was still depressed, and I had to change that over time. But I was really unhappy with that idea, and I started studying with, you mentioned hypnotherapy and psychotherapy. I started studying with a guy named Milton Erickson, who was one of the most well-known, sorry, I forgot to unplug my, can you edit this?
Yeah.
So I met this psychiatrist, hypnotherapist named Milton Erickson, who had a different approach to change. He believed everybody could change. He believed that change could happen pretty quickly. And he also was focused on people's resources and abilities rather than their deficits or their illness or their pathology. And that to me was a revolution. And I actually met him while I was becoming a psychotherapist. And I started, shy as I was, I started arguing with my professors who didn't appreciate it very much. Me telling him, wait a minute, what about their resources and their strengths and their abilities and their inherent knowledge? And people were really unhappy with me in graduate school because I started to cause trouble. And the same thing when I became a therapist, I found that most of my colleagues were focused on what was wrong with people. And I thought, there's a different way here. And I began to, as young as I was and as shy as I was, began to go out and speak about a different approach, a resource-based approach, which I later called the solution-oriented approach. And I have a bunch of books that have been translated into French, and one of them is hypnosis oriented towards solutions. So it was about hypnosis being a resource evoking thing and psychotherapy being a resource evoking thing, that people have skills and abilities and knowledge that if they use them, they could solve their own problems. So I became a passionate advocate of this. And I started to go out and speak. And I was a terrible speaker at first. I was so shy and so anxious that I would just stay rooted to the spot. I wasn't very lively. I didn't do any exercise. I didn't tell any stories, but I was good with lists. I would say there are 5 things about this approach. And
you were the first one to come up with the list, the 5 things to do, or the 10 things.
I was great at that. For some reason, that's one of my superpowers. I have the 5 things, the 4 things. I'm really good at those lists. I wasn't good at speaking. And after 10 years of speaking, and I started to travel all around the world. I came to France. I used to go to Saint-Étienne every 2 years. A weird place to go in France, but I came there every 2 years, Paris, Fairmount, and traveled all over the world teaching these ideas. And I was passionate. I was on fire with it. And people would come up to me and say, where's your book? Oh, no. I don't know how to write. I'm a little too hyper, as you can see, to write. I can't sit down. I'm not a good writer. I'm not a natural writer. And finally, after years of people bugging me, I wrote my first book, and it was painful. It was blood on the keyboards, 3 years. I hated it. I was bored. But I really wanted to get the information out. So I was passionate enough that I, just like speaking, I sort of persisted through the difficult part, and I finished that first book, and then I had an idea for a second book, and then I had an idea for a third book, and I got faster at it, and I got better at it. And I had 4 children at home. I had a busy practice. I was traveling around. So I just had to get fast. And I went from 3 years writing a book. These days, I can write a book in a few weeks part-time. So I developed this way of writing, this way of thinking about writing, and then organizing myself to write. And I still don't love to write, but I'm very fast at it. And I don't dislike it as much as I used to, but I love to have written. I love to get my ideas out in the world. So I wrote all these books. I traveled around, given over 3,500 talks all over the world. And I was crazy busy, and I loved it in a certain way, but I didn't have much of a life. So that brings us sort of to the topic that you're interested in, and that is, I decided, look, I'm smart. I figured all these things out. I work really, really hard, but I don't have much of a life. I'm busy all the time. I'm busy from the time I wake up till the time I go to sleep, and I'm overscheduled. I'm overcommitted. I just need to get a hold of my time so I can have a life. When I was a hippie, I used to spend hours just dreaming and reading and playing music and, going to movies and spending time with friends. And now when a friend would contact me and say, let's go to lunch, I really wanted to go to lunch with them, but it felt like, sort of an annoyance or a burden. It's like, oh gosh, I'm so busy, it feels like a burden to go to lunch with a friend. And that seemed really sad to me. I thought, I love my friends. I love my family. My family gets me because I'm home. But my friends, I have to make an effort to see. And I was missing a lot of friendship events. And I decided I am going to figure this thing out about how to have enough money and how to have enough time. That became my passionate quest there after 30 years of pedal to the metal, being too busy.
30 years.
30 years. I loved it in a certain way because I was doing the work I was passionate about. But after a while, it started to take a toll on me, on my friends, on my loved ones. And, I wasn't doing good self-care. I didn't sleep as much as I could have or should have. And I wasn't exercising very much. I just wasn't taking care of myself. And I didn't have that wonderful fallow time that I used to love to, think of ideas and to come up with the next thing I was going to do and to figure out what direction I actually wanted to take in life. So I just said, enough. I am about 5 years ago, 2 airlines that I had traveled on quite a bit, United and Delta, contacted me the same month and said, congratulations, you've just gone over 1 million miles on our airlines. And I thought, that is way too much travel for anyone. Too much carbon footprint.
Both of them. That meant you had 2
Both
million
of them,
miles.
yeah, that's right. And I had traveled on other airlines, so I had hundreds of thousands of miles on Southwest and American and a few other airlines. And I thought, this is crazy. I need to figure out a way to be home, still do the work that I'm passionate about. So that led me to internet marketing and also to internet courses, web-based courses, and also to thinking about time and money in a different way.
Bingo.
Bingo is right.
Yeah.
So I already had a sort of a glimpse of it before, and that is, having written books, one of the cool things about books is you write a book and you do put in a fair amount of time. But after that, every 6 months, every 3 months, depends on your contract, they send you money if your book sells.
Yeah.
And so that's passive income. It's you had to do something active, but then you put something together that and now I wrote my first book came out in 1987. It's out of print, so I don't get any money from that, but I have about 30 books still in print of those 35. And I get money every 6 months from things I wrote in the 1980s, in the 1990s, 15 years ago. I still get money from those things. And I get translation money if it goes into French or Spanish or German or Chinese. And I get audio money if it goes into an audio book. And so that was good. It wasn't enough to actually live on most years. Some years it was, because I got big advances for my books. But the money diminishes over time, typically, unless you have a bestseller or something like that. When I was on Oprah, I had enough that I could live on for a year for those books, but for that book. But I thought, well, I got to get more things like that. I've got to get more things where I do it once and I can sell it multiple times. So the things to me were audio tapes and videos. These were when you had to distribute them physically, but that was a lot of work too, because you have to send them around. And then when the internet came into its own, where you could have video streaming and audio streaming and online courses, that was it for me. I just thought, I'm going to learn this technology. You can see by the shade of my hair, I'm not a young guy. I'm not a digital native, as they call them. I'm a digital immigrant, because I was born, as my kid one time asked me, he said, did they have fax machines when you were here? I said, no. Did they have telephones? I said, yes, they did have telephones, but they didn't have mobile phones. They didn't have, cell phones. And he said, they didn't
have mobile phones when I was young. So
right. Really? He was shocked, Did they have cars? And I said, yeah, they had cars.
They did have cars, 1904.
Yeah, it wasn't dinosaurs we were riding, but I decided I'm smart. I know how to learn. I went to university. I learned how to learn. Even not just the things that you learn in university. I learned how to learn. So I'm going to learn how to do online courses. And doing online courses wasn't enough, because I did them and they weren't making the money that I hoped they would make to get me off the road, so I wasn't traveling 1 million miles. And I decided, okay, I got to learn online marketing. So that was challenging, because here I am, a therapist. We don't learn marketing. We don't know anything about business. We're usually terrible at that. We don't want money. I was an old hippie, so I didn't want money. And I thought, I got to overcome this. I got to figure out how to make a living online. So in the last 5 years, I've been able to shift my life so that, my joke is, I wanted to develop a work style that didn't require my presence or my time. So I have done that. I put in very little time and I make more money than I used to. And I'm having a bigger impact because I have students from all over the world in my courses, and I can get the perfect version of the course. And when you speak, there's something really nice about the liveness of it. There's something that you always miss. Oh, I should have mentioned that, or I didn't say that as well as I could have. I can get the perfect version of it and keep changing it online if I think of something new, or I think there's a better way of saying it, or if people misunderstand it. So the last 5 years, I spent a lot of time figuring out and mastering both how to put stuff online and how to get it out to people in an effective way and make money with it so it supports the next thing you want to do.
Yeah.
So that was one of the pieces that I came up with to free up my time and free up my money so that I had enough time and enough money. And I've found in life, when I meet people, they either have one or the other. When I was a hippie, I didn't have any money and I had a lot of time. When I got really involved in my career, I had more money, but I didn't have any time. And so I thought there's got to be a way to have both. And it was partly creating more sources of passive or what I'll call massive income, one of the two. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But the next one is to get control of the four things. I told you I was good with these lists. So here's my four things that you can get control of to have enough money and enough time. Here's the acronym in English, TEAM. It's team. So you and your team, time, energy, attention, and money. So you have to figure out a way to get enough time, energy, attention, and money, and to control your time and energy and attention and money. And what was happening for me was that a lot of other people were, or my things, because I owned a lot of things. I owned a big house and I had a lot of possessions. I thought, I don't own possessions, they own me. They're taking up my time, my money. I have to repair them. I have to store them. And I just took a look at my life and I just decided to clean it out, sort of like those decluttering books that are popular these days, you know.
What was your name? The woman from Japan, yeah.
Yeah, that woman who says, if it doesn't delight you, that isn't my criteria. But I do think that the things in your life, the objects in your life, your cars, your houses, all the stuff that you have, is frozen energy and sometimes takes your attention. So I went through, I had, from my whole career, I had all these audio tapes and CDs and videotapes and books. I had 8,000 books. And I just decided this is a digital age. I'm digitizing all this. So I just got rid of books. I donated them or gave them to friends or donated them to libraries. And I got a digital copy of any book I wanted to keep on Amazon. And then I digitized all my audios, I digitized all my videos, and I could just feel the energy flowing back into my body. I had thousands of these things, and I just put them in the cloud or on hard drives. And so I got rid of that stuff, and it wasn't taking my energy or my attention anymore.
It's amazing. It's amazing how decluttering actually has such a huge effect on so many areas of our lives.
And I hated it, to tell you the truth. I was terrible at it. It's like writing books. I love the result of it, but I didn't like the process. So I got a friend who actually loved to declutter to help me with it because I kept giving up on it. I was like, oh, this is too hard. I can't do it. She was great. She really knew how to do it, and she stuck with me when I wanted to give up. So, I asked for support, and all of a sudden I had all this energy and all this attention freed up so that I could figure out, okay, what do I want to do? Now I had enough money. I also had to stop the money leaks and the time leaks. Time leaks is agreeing to do things that aren't really right for you. You've done it. I've done it. Almost everybody that's listening to this has done it. Oh yeah, I'll do that. And I would overcommit.
Yeah. And
I'm compulsively a nice guy who always wants to say yes and make everybody else happy. So bad pattern. So I learned a simple technique, and that was, if somebody would ask me and my knee-jerk reaction would be, yes, I'll do that. And then I'd find later I'd overcommitted or I didn't really want to do it. It wasn't right for me. I would stall and I would say, let me think about that. Will you contact me tomorrow or in 2 days or whatever it was? And I wouldn't do an instant yes. And in the interim, I would realize this isn't really right for me or I don't have time for it. I'm overcommitted as time goes. So I started saying no to things, the gentle and effective no. And the other thing I did was when people would ask me, I'd say, you know, my tendency is to say yes, but I've realized that if I do say yes, I'm going to be really doing a disservice to my loved ones. I won't be spending as much time with them as I need, and they're neglected as they are. Or I won't be able to spend any time on self-care. I won't sleep as well as I do. I won't eat as well. I won't exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to say no. And people would write back, even when you turn them down, they go, good for you. I need to do more of that. So It was a gentle but effective no. And then saying, so first you have to say no to yourself. I can't do everything. I don't have the time or the attention or the energy to do everything.
Mm.
And then I stopped the money leaks. I realized, like most people, I was spending money on things that weren't right for me. I had ongoing subscriptions that I wasn't using or monthly payments that I wasn't using. And I thought, I'm going to stop the money leaks. I'm going to stop all debts. That's the thing. I was in debt, and then you're paying money to bankers and credit card companies. So I'm going to get rid of that. So I'm to my last debt this year. I used to have a lot of debt, and I'm paying off my house, which is my last debt, but I have no other debts. And partly because I started bringing in more money. So let me say the last thing, and then you and I can have more of a conversation rather than having a conversation.
Okay, I'm enjoying this. It's fascinating.
So I figured out there were two kinds of ways to not just stop money leaks, but get more money in. One was the passive income, where you didn't have to work. You start to separate time from money. Mm. And the second one is not just passive income, but massive income. So for me, online courses and learning to market them effectively. When I first started, I'd make a couple of thousand. Now I make, people are weird about money, so I don't know how specific you want me to get, but
you can
I make
be honest.
hundreds of thousands of dollars when I released an online course, which for me was stunning when I learned effective marketing techniques with it. So that's massive income. And even if I spend a fair amount, it's hard to spend all that money. So I made more money than I put out. And, that's the old thing.
Yeah. That's the magic formula, right?
Right. Don't spend more than you make. And I was always spending more than I make in thinking that I would pay it off eventually. But you keep getting deeper and deeper because you're paying interest. So passive income or massive income. So separating time from money, big thing for me is that I wanted to have work that I would do that I was passionate about. And then once I separated time from money and I had more than enough money and I paid off my debts, the next thing that happened is, wow, I've got enough time. I do good self-care. I sleep 8 hours a night. I wake up without an alarm almost every morning. And I have this great life that I can do what I want and schedule. I have weeks where I have nothing scheduled on my schedule. It's fantastic. It never used to be like that. Well, what do I want to do now? And an old dream came up. I played music since I was a teenager. I learned guitar when I was a teenager, and I wrote songs as a teenager. And I thought, I didn't do music when I was younger because I thought it was kind of selfish because, I thought music is for me. Psychotherapy, writing books, teaching, speaking, doing interviews like this, that's for other people. And I thought, music has saved my life at times. When I was depressed, I used to listen to the same music and feel comforted by it or hope from it, or it articulated some feeling that I had, but I couldn't really put into words. And I thought, music is a great thing. It's in every culture in the world. We have music. We need music. I'd like to be a songwriter. And so very improbable, like it was improbable for me to become a speaker or a writer or an internet marketer. For me, it's entirely improbable to become a professional songwriter, but that's my new quest. So I told people we'd get to why the guitars are hanging behind me. And now I have enough time and enough money, and I'm pursuing a career as a professional songwriter. So it's cool.
That's awesome. So, one of the things that definitely that I hear over and over again is people expect things to happen really quickly. And when they don't, they sort of give up. Or B, that, I'm too old for this. Like the number of times I've heard people say, and, I've heard people in their 30s, say, I'm so old. Like, I should be somewhere else.
I should have started this 10 years ago.
Yes.
If I'd only started 10 years ago, I would have been able to do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I have an answer for that.
Yes.
Again, my hair is partly my answer. But what, about 10 years ago, I have an email newsletter that I send out, and somebody on my newsletter list said, you always recommend a book of the month in your newsletter. I have a book recommendation for you. And this person had sent me like two or three book recommendations before. And they were always great. I loved the books that she had recommended. So it's other people recommend books I may read or may not, but I always took her seriously. And she recommended this book. It was by a guy named Norman Doidge. It was called The Brain That Changes Itself. And it was a book about brain growth. It was a nonfiction book. She'd recommended fiction books before, which were great. And I read this book, and it was like a novel. It was this adventure story of how when I went to university and they taught me psychology and neurological and physiological psych, the idea was the brain was fixed after you were a teenager. It didn't grow anymore. You just lost brain cells if you got brain damage. If you hit your head, you lost some brain cells and you were dumber than you were before. And so this book totally gave light to that and said, not true. People can learn and grow new brain cells and make new connections all through life. Now that's common now. It's called neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. But this book explained it so well. And basically they said, two ways to do that as you age, because you do slow down a little as you age. The brain growth slows down a little. And if you're really stressed or depressed, brain growth can even stop. So, first of all, get rid of some stress. Don't be depressed. Be happier. That's one thing to create brain growth, or the good conditions for brain growth. But the other two things are exercise and, eat right, be healthy. Just heart health is going to be good for your brain, because if you're heart healthy, there's a lot of blood getting to your head. And the second and exercise actually generates new brain cells, or it's correlated with the generation of brain cells. But the other thing is learn something new that's a little bit of a stretch for you, not so overwhelming you give up. A new language, perfect thing. Music, learn to play an instrument or sing, good for the whole brain. And learning something that's hard for you to learn, but is good for you to learn, and it stretches you a little. And I thought, oh gosh, I've got to learn this internet stuff. I don't know it. It's not natural for me, but I can learn. I know because I've learned other things in life. So I would give them a pep talk, and I would give oneself a pep talk saying, that's what characterizes human beings. Yeah. If you're a horse and you give birth to a colt, that colt can stand up and pretty much function on its own in a few minutes. Yep. If you're a human being, you can't function on your own for years. That's the bad news. And the good news, because the good news is because the brain continues to develop after birth for a human being. And it turns out that's true until we die. The potential is there for the brain to develop. So I'd say when I started to age, and I thought, I got to keep my brain alive. I need to exercise better, take better care of myself, get enough sleep. And I need to keep learning stuff that's interesting and new for me, but it's a stretch for me to create new brain cells and new connections. So I'd say do it for yourself, do it for your health. And the outcome, find something you can learn that would be good for your lifestyle, would create enough time and enough money and some freedom for you. So you could work from anywhere, you could do the work that you are passionate about and love, and that I say also that contributes to other people. So that's really important.
Yeah. Well, I find, one of the things also that I find with people, when you say people can do the work that they love, people often get stuck. And one of the things I also encounter very often with, whether it's my clients or my environment, is that people, they have very little to no awareness of their story and what's kind of driving them. So what would you say? And essentially, because people are so misaligned with who they are and what they want,
I think that's right.
They get stuck, and they don't know how to get unstuck. And I know that that's one of the things that you've written about.
I have one of these lists. Okay, I'm good with these lists. That's what you said.
Yeah, let's go with the list.
It's my superpower. It's my only superpower. Is that
that's a question I should ask. It's like, what's your superpower? Because billo'hanlon is a superpower.
So let me tell you a story. Yeah, that is my superpower. That's it. That's my only superpower. I have a few skills and talents, but that is a superpower because I've written all these books, and sometimes I've co-written books. Anytime I co-write a book, my co-author and I will talk about it, and we'll talk about it for a few minutes, and I'll go, okay, here's the outline, and I'll just give them the outline. It just shows up in my mind. So that's why I call it a superpower, because it isn't something I have to effort at. I really love creating online courses or talks or books, because it's like, oh, I can take all this information and make it into a clear list. So here's my list. And how you figure, so let me tell you a story first. So sure. I always like the stories that go with things. So maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. My younger sister, I came from a big family, as I said, my younger sister called me up and said, it seems to me you've always known what you wanted to do. And you always find something to do that you really, are passionate about. My husband hates his life. He hates his work. Why don't you write a book about how you find what you're supposed to do? I go, here's the problem. I actually don't have a list for that, because I've done it by Braille. I've done it by feel. It's they have this game, in America, maybe they have it in France as well. Warmer, yes, cooler. It's a little kid's game. And you go, getting closer.
My 6-year-old son plays that all the time.
There you go. So I would do it by warmer. Oh, wow, I'm excited about this. Cooler. I don't like that anymore. I used to love it, and it used to be warmer. Now it's cooler. So I better go in this warmer direction. So I always did it by Braille, and I never had a formula about it. I didn't even, people do this visioning of their lives. I'm not good at visualizing, so I didn't even have that. I had some goals, I guess, but more, I just did it by feel. And so I said, sorry, I just, I've written a lot of books, but that is one I can't write. And about 2 years later, this often happens to me. I'm a great sleeper, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had a totally clear outline of the book that would tell people how to figure out what they were supposed to do.
for your brother-in-law.
Yeah, my brother. By then they were divorced. It was too late. So, whatever. But I wrote the book anyway. And it's the fastest book I ever wrote. I wrote that book in a week, actually. Wow. That's the fastest I've ever written since then.
What is that one called?
It was called A Lazy Man's Guide to Success. It was about me being a lazy man. It wasn't a sexist book just for men. It was about me being a lazy man and figuring out what you're supposed to do with your life and how to find meaning and purpose and passion in your life and success. So let me give you the Cliff Notes to that very quick version. And here's the 4 things. People often say you should find what you love, but I don't think that's exactly right. I think you should find what energizes you. So for me, there are 4 energies. And the first one is bliss. And so bliss is, that Joseph Campbell thing. Somebody, asked him, what would you tell a student about what they should do with their life? He said, follow your bliss. If you follow your bliss, everything works out, which means what brings you alive, what you love, what energizes you in a certain way, your passionate joy, your soulful joy, not just what feels good in the moment, but this deep, deep soulful purpose and joy. All right, but that's easy if you can find it. Not everybody finds it, but if you know that, like Steven Spielberg, when he was a teenager, his parents bought him a video camera. He started making movies in his backyard. He's like, this is all I ever want to do. If you know that, go follow that. Don't worry about making money with it. Just follow that, whatever it is. So that's, second one is blessed. What I mean by blessed is someone sees something in you. Someone says, wow, you're really good at listening. You should become a therapist. Or, wow, the way you play music, you should do music. Or, you just have such a wisdom to you. You should teach, you should tell people what your ideas, they're great ideas. Somebody blesses you in a certain way. They see something in you and they encourage that in you. It could be a parent. It could be a teacher. It could be a friend. It could be somebody you just meet that randomly says, wow, you ought to do that thing. Yeah. That's an amazing talent. And you sometimes don't even recognize it as talent because you just think, doesn't everybody do that? Doesn't everybody know that?
This is so easy.
Right. And sometimes blessed is being at the right place at the right time. So if you were an American expat and you lived in Paris in the 1920s with Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and, all these people that were making great art, that was a moment that you just blessed to be in that same place at that time. And, you know, if you were a folk rock musician and you were in Los Angeles in the early 1970s with James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and the Eagles and Jackson Browne, that was the place to be. It was just the place to be, and you were blessed to be there. So sometimes it's circumstantial blessing. Sometimes you're born with a natural ability, but often it's a person who encourages you, a mentor, a role model, somebody who encourages you. And then we get to the darker side of things, and that is pissed. That is, and I mean it in the U.S. sense, not
Angry.
drunk, but angry.
Yeah.
And that is,
very,
what
very
are you righteously indignant about? You know, when the people, as we're recording this, people in the United States are upset about our president, our recent president, who was an embarrassment to some of us, and we went on the streets and we protested, which is, again, a nice French tradition because the barricades in the 1960s. You go out there and you're righteously indignant. So, you know, it's the Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King strategy. You protest against injustice in the world, something that pisses you off, something that's not right, and you want to make it right. That's what, you know, took me out of my shyness and my inability to write, my lack of ability to write. I was so righteously indignant about what I thought was wrong with my field, psychotherapy, and I wanted to fix it. And so I didn't do writing or speaking out of my bliss or out of being blessed. Nobody told me I was good at it. I wasn't good at either one of those things. I did it because I had such passionate energy to fix something that I thought was wrong in the world. So here's the key to the negative ones. So blissed and blessed, that's easy. But pissed, it's easy to pick up the AK-47 or the gun and go hurt people if you're that angry. But you have to transform it into a contributing energy. It has to be a positive thing that changes the world in a better way, not just creates more anger and destruction and hurt and trauma. So you have to transform that so-called negative energy, anger or righteous indignation, into something that contributes to making the world a better place, to reducing the kind of suffering you're seeing in the world, that creates conditions that are better for people. And or that teach people something. I mean, this is sort of what you're doing in this whole event, that you're trying to help people have enough, finally enough, where they're not always in that scarcity and the lack of stuff, and they have enough time, they have enough money, they have enough love and success and all that kind of stuff. That is one of your missions, is one of the things you want to contribute. And it's because there's something off about the world that you've noticed. And you've taken that energy and put it all this time and effort that you put into making this thing go out in the world. That is a powerful thing. Then the last one is dissed. Again, sort of an American euphemism, but you know, the kids say, you dissed me, that you disrespected me. So I think of that as wounded. So in French, blessure, to, you know, the wound. So it's, you know, bliss, bless, blessure. And so.
It's too bad. Yeah, you could do a bilingual version.
There is a way to do it bilingual. Somebody did it for me once, and I was like, oh, that's
alliteration in there if it was
actually
bilingual.
rhymes. It's very good. So they did it in Sweden too. There was a way to rhyme it in Swedish. But so bliss, blessed, dissed, and pissed, or pissed and dissed. And dissed is, where have you been wounded in your life because somebody's disrespected you or someone you cared about? So say your mother was getting beaten when you grew up. You know, there's an English actor who's become very sensitized to that because his mother was beaten by his father when he was growing up. And now that's become his charitable passion, to make sure women are empowered not to stay in violent relationships and to stand up to, you know, domestic violence. So that's his diss. You know, I saw Peter Gabriel, the rock star, once give a talk on TED Talks, and his big thing is human rights. He was raped when he was a child by a bunch of schoolmates. And he totally denied and forgot the whole thing. And later, when he's asked by Bono to go on a human rights tour for Amnesty International, he meets people that are like him, but of course, times 1,000, because they saw their partner get thrown out of an airplane. But when they tried to complain about it, nobody believed him. It was denied, suppressed, and forgotten. So his big charitable cause was get video cameras to put in the hands of human rights people so they can document human rights abuses so it'll never be forgotten or denied. So whatever your wound is, that's where you were sensitized. Now, back to my superpower. When I was a child, I was molested by a relative. And the way he molested me was he confused me into the molestation situation. So now as an adult, I have a superpower. Anytime I come into a new situation and I'm confused, I have this compulsion to make it all clear. So I come up with, so I've turned it into an asset. Even though it was a wound, I know here's the 4 energies that you need to pay attention to in life. Here's the 3 ways to stop money leaks. You know, I'm good at that because I developed that as a compensatory skill because of the wound that I had. Plus, I'm also sensitized. And when I was a therapist, I specialized in working with people who were abused. Sexually or emotionally or physically, because I really understood that from the inside out. And I really felt great compassion, more, you know, I felt great compassion for all my clients or patients, but that one I had a special sensitivity to. So what has life sensitized you to? And again, you can either withdraw from that sensitivity, like the world is too much and I can't handle it, or you can transform that into, I can go out and help people that are like I was. When I was a teenager, nobody listened to me. So now I'm going to work with teenagers and listen to them. When my parents got divorced, they were so bitter. I have a friend who specializes in this because her parents got a bitter divorce when she was a teenager. She specializes in preventing divorces if they're preventable. That's her wound and that's her work. So I say those are the 4 energies of life that tell you what you're supposed to do with your life for a life of meaning and passion. And it's not always what you love, it's what you're passionate about. And the second thing is they'll tell you when it's time to make a change. That is, sometimes the old thing is done and it's time for something new. You know, I used to do psychotherapy, then I became more of a speaker and I was passionate about that. Then I became more of a writer and I was passionate about that. And then I got tired of traveling around and writing and I did online courses. And then that sort of ran its course. And the next bliss that showed up for me was music and writing songs. So following yourself through a life, because we know that very few people do one career all through life. And you have to figure out what's next for you and what's up for you and what's current for you. And people say, how do you do so much? How did you write so many books? I say, I follow the energy.
And I love this point because I think it's absolutely right. Can you explain how you got to know what the energy is? Like, how do you recognize which energy to follow? Because that's actually something that, you know, as I said at the beginning, a lot of people are really unaware. Like, there's so little awareness. There's, you know, it's like they're at the core of this sort of enveloped, you know, like an onion, right? There's so many layers of like protection and hiding and everything on top. It's like they can't, you know, even if the voice is like screaming, Bill, you have to do this, they can't even hear it. Right?
Sometimes it's a little whisper and sometimes it's screaming, they're ignoring it. So here's what I would say. This is so weird. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was a younger man and less aware of what was going on with me, there used to be a television show on in the United States called The Waltons. It was a sappy, big family story about this family that lived in the country. And it was during the Depression era in the United States. And always at the end of that show, I would cry. And I'm not much of a crier. I mean, I cry every once in a while, but it's not my main thing. And I was always taken by surprise by it. Every time I watch it, at the end of this show, they would just show the house that the family lived in, and there was a light on up here and a light on down here, and all you would hear is the family saying goodnight to one another. Good night, John boy. Good night, Aaron. Good night, you know, this is Daddy, Papa. Good night, Mama. And I would just, tears would just roll down my cheek, and I would start sobbing. And I thought, what is that? And I thought, I grew up in a family that was kind of tough with one another, and that is the opposite of that. It's kindness. So again, what I said before is I'd always find my way by Braille. It's like, why does that move me? And that led me to become a psychotherapist because I thought, I want people to be kinder to one another. And that's what psychotherapy can do. So I became a couples and family therapist because I thought, I want families not to hurt each other, which they can do. And I would like them to love one another and be kind to one another, nurture one another. So that gave me my first direction. And then the next one was, you know, I am pissed off about the way psychotherapy is. It's focused on what's wrong with people. And I felt that anger. So you sort of have to pay attention to the warmer, cooler, and things that happen again and again. I would cry every time I still do. If it's shown on a rerun, if I ever see it, I cry at the end of that. And I thought, okay, there's a hint there. I couldn't decipher it for a little while, but there's a hint there. Or when you see an animal get hurt and you just can't even watch it, or you get so livid, that's a hint. There's something there for you. So wherever the energy goes, wherever your attention goes, wherever your time goes, that's probably a hint about what there's something in there and you can explore it. You should get a coach who will help you realize there's something there for you if you can't get that insight yourself, or a therapist. But I think coaches are pretty good at helping you figure that out.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because, that's the thing I really love about coaching is, you've been describing psychotherapy as focusing on what's gone wrong or what is wrong. Whereas coaching, as I'm sure you know, and you probably would agree, is really about the focus on what can go right and the possibilities and the future.
And where you want to go in the future instead of where you've been in the past. I think that's right. And you can draw on the past to get some insight to where you are and where you want to go and what some of the things you need to deal with are. But that's why I like coaching way better than psychotherapy, and why I was attracted to and created an approach to psychotherapy that's a lot like coaching. It was present-oriented to future-oriented, strength-oriented, ability-oriented, action-oriented. And a lot of people, when they hear it, they go, that's just like coaching. I go, yeah, but it was before coaching, and psychotherapy was focused in a different direction. I wanted to change how psychotherapy was done. But get a coach who can help you recognize where you're going, where you want to go, where your passion goes, and what contribution you have to make in the world, and then be effective at applying that. Because once you know that, that's only the first piece. The second piece is how do you develop the courage and the discipline, if you will, to follow that in the face of discouragement and failure. And, my teacher, Milton Erickson, used to say, if you fall on your face, at least you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's somebody I interviewed a couple of weeks ago who said failure is actually just feedback in regards to,
if you can take it that way. And not everybody takes it that way. And so, that is the key. And again, it's human beings. It's the nature of human beings. We go out in the world, and like cockroaches, we've been able to go to every part of the world and survive because we're experimenters. We're human experimenters. And it's the tragedy of some people's lives, as you've been saying, is that they won't experiment. They stop experimenting, and you think, that's your human legacy. You've got an adaptable brain. You can adapt to almost any environment. You can live in Antarctica or in the Saharan desert if you're willing to change. And, that old thing that was attributed to Darwin, saying, somebody said Darwin didn't say it was the survival of the fittest. It was the survival of those most adaptable to change. And I think that's partly what coaching is about, is helping people finally, stop the rigidity of the same thing over and over again, which isn't working, and do something different. That's the book that got me on Oprah. It was called Do One Thing Different. It was make your life an experiment and find out what works. And most of it's going to fail, and some of it's going to succeed if you do something different finally.
Yeah, it's brilliant. That's brilliant. I call it just make up a new story. If the old story doesn't work anymore, make up a new one that does.
And that's what I say. Again, here's a good list for you. So if it's not working, change the viewing, which is what you're talking about, changing the story you have about it, or change where you're paying attention. Change the doing, which is change your actions, your interactions, or how you speak about it. Those are things that are the doing. They're under your control because you can do them. And then the last one is change your context. Who you're hanging out with, what you're reading, what environment you're in, all that kind of stuff. Your nutritional environment, all that stuff can make an impact. So if it isn't working, do something different in one of those three areas: the doing, the viewing, and the context.
I love it. Love it. Oh, wow. This has been such a fascinating conversation.
Thank you for inviting me to do it. You can tell I have some passion about this stuff. And I love the thing that you're up to, because I see people live in a world of not enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of my missions is really to help people see the abundance that is available to them. And whether they come from, a family that lived under a bridge. I mean, literally, some families do. or they were born in a castle. I mean, anything is possible if you actually believe it to be. So,
Right.
yeah, the only thing that actually stops us is ourselves, really. So
Yeah, and shifting to that abundance, there's enough. I remember Buckminster Fuller was one of my heroes, and he said there's enough energy hitting the earth every day with sunlight that we could power everything if we learn how to harness it. And it's the first time I'd ever heard that idea. And he said, there's actually enough food for everybody on the planet, but it's not evenly distributed.
yeah,
Those two ideas, because I'd grown up in a world where it was scarcity, it was like, there is not enough.
especially Irish. Yeah,
Facts, there is enough. Just how we're accessing it is not happening. So
yes.
you can move from that world of scarcity to abundance where there's finally enough, where enough is enough, and where you have enough.
And you are enough.
You are enough, because it's not just money. It's time, it's emotions, it's love. It's all these areas where you live in scarcity, and then you see more and more evidence of scarcity. And when you live in abundance, you start to see more and more evidence of abundance. And it's an amazingly a good thing. When the U.S. and the world went through the recession and economic hard times in the last few years, every day I had these washes of gratitude that would come unbidden to me, as I was like, I have enough. I have a roof over my head. I have running water. I have food.
Yeah.
I can pay my bills. What a grateful thing. There's enough. There's enough. And most people don't live in that world, and you're inviting them to. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I really want to acknowledge you for your generosity throughout this conversation. It's been brilliant, and your honesty and authenticity. It's absolutely, refreshing and gorgeous to see.
Thank you. And I told you before we started recording, I was like, I'm looking at my picture, I'm looking at your picture, and I look like this pale ghost. You look so tan, beautiful. Your lighting. I said, I want those lights. I want the lights to see. I was distracted by that. I was like, mine seems so pale. Yours seems so full of life. I think you're reflecting that abundance.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I absolutely love this work. So, it's probably my energy I put through. So any sort of last words of wisdom that you
just a reminder, to plug your time leaks, and get rid of empty activities that don't lead to stuff that you love or that you're passionate about. Plug those money leaks, develop that massive and passive income. Say no to yourself about things that you probably shouldn't do, and say a gentle no to others to make sure you do have enough time and enough money. It's possible. So thank you again for having me.
And how can people find you if they want to find you, Bill?
billo'hanlon.com. So billo'hanlon.com.
Okay, we'll put that.
I have courses that are online, but you can't find them actually.
Oh, they're secret?
Because I do a certain kind of marketing model where they're not available except once a year.
Okay.
And so if people connect to me, I'll let them know how to find that other stuff. But
perfect.
I don't have anything to advertise at this moment. I have enough.
All right, great. Well, thanks again for your time and your generosity, and all the best.
All right.
Take care. Bye.